I'm going to give you a comparison of the Canon R50 and the Sony ZV-E10 video quality, autofocus performance, and rolling shutter, along with some other video features to help you decide which one is the best for video for you. First off, we have the low light video image quality, and as you can see, the image quality from both cameras is very similar, with slightly more noise in the background of the R50 at an aperture of f2 and 3200 ISO. Both of these images are straight out of the camera with slight color correction just to make the colors match. Both cameras still look decent with the ISO pushed up to 6400 and f2.8 on the aperture. Both are obviously more noisy, but there's still a little more noise again in the background of the R50, and the ZV-E10 seems to be a bit more saturated straight out of the camera. When moving to f4 and pushing the ISO all the way to 12,800 ISO, which isn't something you normally want to do, you can see the images are really starting to fall apart. There's some focus hunting on the R50, along with even more noticeably worse noise in the background of the image. The ZV-E10's colors also seem to be falling apart more than the R50's at this high ISO. But keep in mind that this is just me standing near a street light, and even if shooting in low light, you want to add your own lights to those low light situations to shape your shots even better and get the best quality possible regardless of an outdoor or indoor lower light setting. Here we have f2 again, but now the ISO is set down to 1250 because of an external light. The coloring on both cameras looks much better, with the ZV-E10 seeming to be sharper straight out of the camera than the R50. So if you have good lighting and a good lens, then you'll definitely get great image quality out of both cameras. So now let's look to see how the autofocus performs in a couple of different tests. The autofocus facial tracking had no problem staying locked onto my face while running in towards the camera from far away on the R50. And the autofocus racked focus from my face to the background and back to my face quickly when I moved into and out of the frame. The ZV-E10 also had no problem staying locked onto my face while running towards the camera, but I did notice the ZV-E10 seemed to rack focus to the background and back to my face much quicker than the R50 when moving into and out of the frame. However, the ZV-E10 does have multiple subject shift and lock-on options to choose from if you don't want it to rack that quickly. And another thing you're probably starting to notice is the rolling shutter when moving around in the frame on both cameras, but before we address that, let's take a look at one more autofocus test. I like to do a dolly zoom test on all my cameras and lenses because it's a complex maneuver that shows the autofocus works really well if it can stay locked on while moving and zooming. The R50 did amazingly well with staying completely locked on while doing this test, because usually cameras tend to lose focus when I dolly back away from the subject, but the R50 stayed locked on regardless of the direction of the movement. The ZV-E10 also did quite well with the movements. However, I did notice the camera go slightly out of focus during the initial movement regardless of the direction. It was also more jittery during the movement, which was probably due to the camera being so light, but a little bit of post-stabilization will easily take care of that problem. Now, when it comes to cheaper entry-level cameras like the Canon R50 and the Sony ZV-E10, you're going to have the issue of rolling shutter, which is a jello-like look to objects in the image when moving the camera around quickly or when something in the frame moves quickly from side to side because of the way the sensor scans the image for video. Both cameras have a very noticeable rolling shutter, and there's not really any way around it aside from trying to be careful with quick side-to-side movements in your shots. The higher the focal length of your lens, the more this will stand out, but even in these lower-end cameras, the rolling shutter is still noticeable at wide focal lengths like 17mm. However, if you are aware of the issue and make slower, more deliberate moves, you can still get good panning shots without this being a problem. I just wouldn't plan on doing any whip pans with these type of cameras unless you don't care about that warped look in your shot. All the shots we've seen so far are from standard profiles on both of the cameras, but something that the ZV-E10 has that the R50 does not have is the option to use picture profiles, which allows you to be able to record a more washed out image to allow for more color correction and grading options when you get to editing. This isn't necessary for making good videos, but it does expand the possibilities of dynamic range and picture quality as you improve with your camera. Another feature the ZV-E10 has is a zoom switch on the front, and I have mine set to be used with clear image zoom, which allows you to zoom in on the image up to an extra 50% with no noticeable loss in image quality. And if you're using a power zoom lens, this feature can be used to control the zoom on that lens. Unfortunately, Canon still stuck a video recording limit of 60 minutes on the R50, which is better than the previous 30 minutes on all their cameras, but the ZV-E10 has no video recording limit, so you can continue to record until you run out of space on your SD card or your battery dies if you're not hooked up to external power. And considering that the cameras are within $20 of each other, I definitely choose to go with the Sony ZV-E10 over the Canon R50 because of the extra video features you get, including other things like more touch autofocus options and even more exposure metering choices. But if you have any questions about either of these cameras, post them down in the comments. I'll try to help you out the best I can there. And I have lots of videos on the channel teaching you things like lighting, framing, lens choices, how all that stuff's gonna affect your videos. I have a video showing the best lens that I would get for an APS-C camera as well that can help you out. A lot of stuff on the channel to help you get the most out of whichever camera you choose, because remember, the camera is just a tool and it's the skills that's what makes your videos good. So hit that like button if this was helpful, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you on the next one.